First of all, we'll look at the Pernod Ricard definition of an insight. Secondly, we'll look at the key ingredients. And then thirdly, we'll look at some crafting tips that will help you to write and formulate a good insight. So when looking at the definition, this is the Pernod Ricard definition of a great consumer insight. It's a fresh story about our consumers' motivation applied to unlock growth. A great illustration of this is MasterCard. They are, in essence, purely a paying device with Visa as its biggest competitor. But by creating an insight that is guiding all their activations and all the things they do, they have been able to go beyond that functional paying device and were able to get into a more emotional space. The insight that MasterCard today is activating in everything they do is the following. Life isn't about what you buy, but it's about the relationships you have with the people you care about and the special moments that you can share with them. And a great illustration of how they activated that through a commercial is in the Priceless campaign.
Most popular toy for toddler, $500. Most popular stuffed animal for toddler, $350. Most popular picture book for toddler, $60. Watching her play with a cardboard box instead? Priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard.
Secondly, let's take a look at the 3 key ingredients of a good insight. It's simplicity and relevance, freshness, and emotion. A good consumer insight, first of all, is recognizable and real to a consumer and is expressed in consumer language. A good consumer insight appeals to a consumer because they're able to understand what is being said about them. A great example of this simplicity and consumer relevance is the communication insight behind the brand Oreo. Whenever people eat an Oreo, they like to eat the middle first and save the chocolate cookie, so the outside, for last. Then you also have those people who like to dip it in their milk as well. Twist, lick, and dunk. Oreo often uses this in advertising, and people love it because they feel they came up with the idea first and that the advertising is just a great way of reminding them about this. So first key ingredient, relevance and simplicity. A second key ingredient of a good consumer insight is the freshness component. A good insight should present a fresh way of looking at things. A great example here is Dyson, changing the business model within the vacuum cleaning industry. Before, it was always thought that people did not want to see the dirt or dust, but in fact, the opposite was true. Dyson found out that consumers who are cleaning actually want to see the effect of their efforts because to them it's an emotional confirmation that they're doing a great job. The success behind Dyson is not only that the vacuum cleaner is without a dust bag. More importantly, it's that the Dyson has a transparent container to collect the dirt. This insight has changed the vacuum cleaning industry, and it is as such a fresh insight because you might not have had this need before, but when you hear it, it clearly presents a fresh way of looking at things. A third key ingredient of a good consumer insight is emotion. A good insight creates an emotional desire to change, either through attention or through an aspiration. A great example of this emotional component is Pampers, who, through their commercials, have gone beyond the purely functional way of keeping a baby dry, but are tapping into a more emotional space in everything they do.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and bright and I...
To wake up happy, all a baby needs is your love and a dry night's sleep in Pampers. Unlike other brands, Pampers have a unique additional absorption layer for up to 12 hours of dryness and more beautiful mornings. Pampers, wishing you nothing but love, sleep and play.
If all those 3 key ingredients are presented, then ideally a good consumer insight is able to unlock growth. It's able to be activated. So as such, the result of a good consumer insight is that it creates a foundation for actionable marketing decisions, ultimately leading to a competitive advantage. Then thirdly, let's look at some crafting tips of how to write a good consumer insight. Ideally, a good consumer insight contains 3 essential words: I, because, but. I is stepping into the actual behavior that the consumer is doing at that moment. So where and when is our insight situated? What is the specific context that this insight is rooted in? The second key word is because, tapping into the motivations of people, explaining why they do the things they do. And then the third essential word is but, hinting to attention. What is the friction or aspiration that we see in consumers' behavior, and what is actually the problem they are looking to solve? Let's look at this from 2 examples, stepping into those 3 words that make a great insight. A first example of how these 3 words lead to a good consumer insight can be seen here. So at home, when I'm having guests over, especially if at short notice, it's important to me that my house looks clean. Why? Because I want them to see I'm a tidy person, but this can take a lot more time than I have. So you can clearly see here the 3 words which are essential to a good consumer insight. There's a context, there's a motivation why people do the things they do, and then we clearly have attention, the fact that it's taking them more time than they actually have. A second example from a completely different industry is this consumer insight. I want to practice sports more often because it makes me feel great in my body and my mind, but when I compare my performances with others, I just feel down and I stop. Again, those 3 words lead to a good consumer insight, tapping into a specific context with a certain motivation, but are also clearly stipulating a tension that consumers would like to see solved. So I, because, but.